This is primarily a meeting of discussion, and we will be live online in a minute. Is that correct?
We're live right now.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to Cuyahoga County's Community Development Reinvestment Advisory Subcommittee. It is Wednesday, July 26th, and my phone tells me that it is 2:04 in the afternoon. Madam Clerk, would you begin the roll call, please?
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll for Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent. Ms. Anderson. Ms. Anderson is absent. Mr. Benjamin. Ms. Blackwell. Ms. Blackwell is absent. Ms. Donald. Ms. Donald is absent. Ms. Martin.
Here.
Mr. Nowak. Mr. Nowak is absent. Mr. Siren. Mr. Siren is absent. Ms. Wheelo. Keith Benjamin.
He called in.
Alternate.
Yeah, he called in. He couldn't find a parking space.
Okay, thank you. Is absent. And Mr. Zone.
Present.
You do not have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Well, we don't have anything we have to vote on, so we can proceed, record this meeting, and keep our progress moving forward. The first item up for discussion is that I wanted to have, Frank, I'm going to have you move to the side, because the first thing we're going to do is have someone from the administration's side of the table talk to us about banking services requests for proposals. Who's giving us the summary today? Ms. Rocco? Roll a chair around the corner, please, Dominique. You get to sit beside the boss and make sure she makes as few mistakes as possible.
I need her. Hey.
So we all need staff for.
interim treasurer. So before we did put the RFP out, it will be out. So we're waiting to feedback. We did hold the meeting last Friday with banks. We have several questions that we have to answer for them. We're going to meet Friday as a team to discuss the answers from the questions that were asked. The proposals in, through the proposals, make sure they're compliant and meet all the criteria. And then we should have that list and the proposals back to us, and we'll have a team review and score the proposal. After Labor Day, Debbie, proposals sent
For simplicity's sakes, approximately how many proposals did you send out the door the day you completed the RFP?
we sent out about
Okay. Those are all banks that are already on our lists. And
banks and is banks, but since we're doing like
identify yourself because we don't hear from you very often.
Nope, Dominique Tatum,
Treasurer's office?
Fiscal.
Fiscal, okay.
So we sent it out to banks as well as merchant service providers.
Okay. So that's a good start. What do you expect to be the submissions? Will it be around that number?
It might be more because when we held the pre-bid conference, we had about 27 people get on the call.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Words of wisdom from you, because we don't want to open this to questions, because we know that this needs to be handled carefully. What are you looking for as the core criteria?
We haven't put that together, but
Okay.
again, as I've stated, we've listened to council, to this committee. We've put those concerns in our RFP. We're looking for community involvement, and of course, assistance elsewhere, hopefully to senior citizens of our community. So we'll see what we get when the proposals come back in.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming to our meeting. See, I told you this was not going to be torturous. When I talked with Lisa, I'm just like, we need to know what the points are when you're going out. And we will also encourage folks we know who are staff at lenders to reach out to you guys. Yesterday, there was a merger that I learned about, so I sent this front page public notice piece to the person at the bank that was part of the merger and said, if you're interested, don't call me, call them.
Thank you. That's fabulous. Yes. The more, the better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank-
And we will keep, as I've promised in our meetings before, we will keep you
Okay.
updated as we move forward.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is, now it's your turn, Frank.
And I'd like the record to reflect that Ms. Donald is in attendance, and you now have a quorum.
And Ms.
Ms. Anderson, you now have a quorum.
Awesome. Continued discussion on subcommittee recommendations. Each of us should have received from Frank a 2-pager that just has his recommendations outlined. Frank, if you would go over those with us, please.
So these were part of the report that I prepared and was reviewed here in March. So these are not new, but I'm not sure that the subcommittees ever acted upon them to carry them forward to the council as a recommendation, although I suppose they would first go to the Community Development Committee and then to the council. So I did ask if we could look at these again. And so what you have are 2 pages that are from the report that I submitted that was originally on pages IX, X, and XI in the narrative summary So I'm not going to go through all this. I think there's really just one item that is really significant, and I need to have it in front of me. Hold on. So number 4, which says, with respect to the next banking services contract in 2024, consider incorporating the following. And it's really the first one. I mean, we could go through the others, but I think it's the first one that, in my view, is really important. We've already, oh, sorry. Okay. In fact, we could make room for, you want somebody else to? All right, okay. So I think one thing that's been talked about for 6 months, 9 months, maybe longer, was this idea that the contract from 2020 lacked specificity, that there weren't measurable objectives, quantifiable objectives. But the other thing that I think that I've raised, similar to that or within the same context of that, is the importance of actually seeing loans being made in a community. And you'll notice that what 4A says is community commitments. Now, this is assuming that the contract has similar language from the 2020 contract where there were 13 community commitments. May not be the same, but I'm referring to that language just because that was what was in there. Community commitments may include a variety of services to underserved communities, meaning other than lending, including services provided in partnership with local organizations. And let me stop and say that could be enterprise community partners, CHN housing partners, neighborhood progress, individual CDCs. It could be my organization that I work for, Fair Housing Center. But at minimum, the contract should include specific, measurable, quantitative benchmarks for direct origination of loans, direct lending, by the partner bank to underserved populations and communities in Cuyahoga County. And I think I just want to say, what's the context of this? There's an important context that in even the last couple years, it's, I think, been shown by research that I've done and other people have done, that homeownership is declining, particularly in the predominantly African-American communities, the east side of Cleveland and east inner suburbs. And at the same time, there's a tremendous increase in out-of-state investors. In some cases, they may be in-state, but a lot of them are from California, Utah, Florida, Texas, and they're from France and Israel, Asia, wherever. So what we have as a broader context is the decline of homeownership amongst African-American communities. Those communities are more and more becoming owned by people who don't live there. And so even though even if we didn't have that circumstance, I still would probably be recommending that a contract the county has with a partner bank have as a minimum, a base requirement that there be loans made. And let me just put out one more thing is, what could possibly happen? A bank says, well, you're right, we're really not the best at making loans, but we are investing in a lot of other projects with enterprise community partners, neighborhood progress, CHN housing partners, you name it, any number of nonprofits. We invest in home ownership counseling. We invest in down payment assistance. So give us a pass on this idea of loans. That's not a priority. I'm suggesting that is a priority. I'm suggesting that this committee recommend to whatever the next step is, Community Development Committee probably, that the contract have at a minimum some quantifiable measurement production of actual mortgage loans. Because I think what's happening is we're seeing a loss of home ownership. People, the last thing I'll put out there is the anecdote, which only surfaced really in the last 2 months. And you've probably heard this before at one or more different meetings when Councilman Polensik of the city of Cleveland went to his local bank branch to get a loan to buy the house next to his that was vacant. He wanted to have it to make sure there was a good outcome. It was $80,000 for sale. And the loan officer said, we don't make loans under $100,000. And what he has said in public meetings is, well, then you're writing off the whole east side of Cleveland. So I guess this is why I'm saying this is extremely important to have as a base minimum requirement that there be the origination of loans, some target goals for that, even if the partner bank is doing wonderful other things. I guess I'm saying that I think this is really important. So that's really, if we don't go through anything else, that was the one thing I thought that we should do.
Was that burning on your chest?
Yeah, well,
You needed to
I've
get it off your
brought it up
chest?
in more than one way.
You feel better now?
Yes, yeah, I do, yeah. I brought it up before, but you've given me an audience to actually really put it out there directly.
Well, you're preaching to a bunch of believers. Whether we are all of the same faith or not, we believe on this issue. I don't think there's a member of this committee that doesn't believe in item A, measurable and quantifiable. Now, we will not be doing the evaluation, but we do have a voice. And that is one of the beautiful things about this committee. While it is a subcommittee, through the Community Development Committee and through the council as a whole, we have a sense of the ability to say that in the next RFP, we're strongly encouraging things. It is the executives team who will be making decisions and recommending they come before council. But as you've seen, I'm not shy about sharing my opinion, and I will stick with my guns. And so it is something that we do believe the executives team has made a commitment to affordable housing. And we know that it is one of the ways that the county generates income to take care of our schools and libraries. And so I'm pretty sure they're going to find a way to make this impactful. Don't know what that exact language is because I'm not in the room for scoring. But we do see in the request for proposal that they have paid some attention to this. But I believe we got copies of this to staff today. Cynthia, did we give a copy of these recommendations? Yes. Okay. Do we call you treasurer? Or do we do you like we're doing Doyle? He's got a nickname for us. We've got a nickname for him too. I-Chi. I even shortened it, interim chief of staff, and so he became the I-Chi.
Yes, you could use that as well. It's interim.
Can I add one more thing?
Certainly.
So actually, I wasn't even thinking of this in the context of the RFP.
Although in general?
Could be. Well, I was more thinking of it in terms of the contract. So maybe a scenario could be a bank might score high enough in the RFP to be approved, even if lending is not their biggest strength. But in the contract, they could be asked, improve that lending that you're doing.
Is that an item in 4? Do you talk about the contractual relationship?
4 starts with when considering the banking services contract, consider incorporating the following into the contract. So it wasn't really put forward as something to be in the RFP, although maybe it should have been also stated that way.
No, I just wanted to make sure that your language actually moved from this committee to the administration. It has now.
Okay.
And so we are doing our part until it gets to council for a vote.
Okay.
Remember, this administrative process, it's much like what you saw when you served on city council. Staff we get to put our ideas out there. They're listening. And I have to say that staff is here on a regular basis. There's always at least one member of the execs team in this room when we have a committee meeting. They've been really gracious about meeting with me and my crazy schedule. They gave up lunch one day for me. So I understand their commitment to the kinds of issues we are discussing is really good. We've continued to discuss them. I don't think they can forget about us because we are constantly talking about this. And so we've made this a big enough issue that when they sit down in the room without us, they say, what about the things that the folks on Cheryl's committee said? So now when after almost 2 months will pass, when they come back to us, I'm confident that even if they don't have it in what they give to us, they know that when it gets to council, staff and council will respond in such a way that we will take care of the issues we're concerned about. So this is not a one-time conversation. This is a long-term dialogue. And they've made me comfortable with the fact that they're going to continue to be supportive of the issues we're committed to. Otherwise, Sarah will get Saturday and Sunday phone calls instead of just weekday phone calls. And she has answered the phone on the weekend too, so. Did we have did I see your
Madam Chair,
hand?
just a comment. So, just a comment through the chair to Mr. Ford, and I appreciate the last statement you made about if another bank is chosen, that they can make their best efforts to improve in those areas. How do we benchmark that? Are we looking back over the previous year, which I don't think is enough? Should it be the previous 2 or 3 years? Take an average? I mean,
So if the bank being considered, or let's say there's a couple that are the finalists, if they happen to be one of the 7 that I've been reviewing for quite a few years, this last report I went back 6 years with 7 banks, but even if it's not one, let's just say it's a surprise, somebody, I could, without too much difficulty, I could go back and do the 6-year review and compare them to their peers. And that would help inform, I think, the decision-making. And I can, I've done it in terms of home purchase loans, home repair loans, small dollar home purchase, then lending to African Americans only, lending to low mod individuals only. I could do it a number of different ways. I certainly would be willing to customize it to this group's satisfaction.
so through the chair to Mr. Ford or to the committee members, I mean, that would be my strong recommendation that there's a little bit of time allowed for the resident expert to look at that information and then share that with the administration, so then they can move that into the dialogue before entering into a contract that would be presented to the council at some point.
Any other questions? Did I see another hand wave anywhere? Mr. Benjamin?
Yeah, just another comment, I guess. The RFP contains a section on contract terms and conditions. I'm wondering whether something general about what we're talking about here should go there, and
Actually, we can't change anything in their RFP. The next time we'll be able to impact this process is when it comes before county council. And county council can make specific requests about what or tell them, if we put it in our legislation, then they have to help deliver that. So the contractual relationship can change when it comes back to when it is referred to county council. And that way council can negotiate with the administration, and then the administration can negotiate with whoever they've selected.
Thank you.
So hold on to your thought.
I will.
Don't give it up, but we can't change or negotiate it now. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Through the chair to, I think the staff, and I apologize for being a couple minutes late, there was a mention of a pre-proposal conference that I guess has happened, and I'm just curious, did any of the conditions that we're discussing come up at that point in time? Like, what is the sentiment?
So let's bring Dominique Tatum back to the microphone for a minute. Could you outline what you went over in the meeting on the 21st?
So in the meeting on the 21st, we pretty much kind of gave an overview of the entire proposal, and we opened the door for questions. No one asked any questions in the area of community redevelopment or investment. Most of the questions that were asked were more towards our volumes. So they wanted to know, like, how many payments we get in our lockbox or our merchant services, like how many credit card transactions we take. But we actually did just kind of receive a question from a bank where they just wanted to know how many years they need to go back in terms of lending. So we're going to answer all the questions and issue those out.
What are you thinking you're going to ask?
How many years to go back?
Mhm.
We have to talk about it because I have to kind of take COVID into
Okay.
the impact of COVID. So I have to kind of ask around to see what's lending kind of low during COVID. So if we should go back to 2019, like the last 5 years, or
So will you be reaching out to the community development
yes.
and housing department?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I have confidence in that ask then.
Thank you.
Great question, Ms. Donald. Any other questions? Yes, back to you, Mr. Ford.
I just thought of something in regard to what was just said. The reason that I went back 6 years in the analysis of those 7 banks was because it was about 6 years ago that on a national level, several large banks, including ones here, entered into community benefits agreements, CBA agreements. These used to be referred to as CRA agreements 20, 30 years ago, for those who are, Barbara would remember. But they're basically the same thing. And KeyBank, Huntington, and Fifth Third all started around 6 years ago, which is why I picked that period of time. Some of the others have entered, of those 7 banks, 4 of the others have entered into more recent agreements at different points in the last 6 years. But I thought going back 6 years made sense. And of course, I'm actually starting to look at the 2022 data, which will take us one more year further. But I just wanted to point that out. What was the rationale for going back 6 years?
Excellent.
And I don't have anything else. I mean, if we were to go through this, I don't think we need to go through it deeply. But if anybody has a question that was lingering from when this was first presented a couple months ago, we could go through it. But I just wanted to bring up that one point that, as you said, was burning somewhere. It was
You
giving me
needed
an
to get it
ulcer.
off your chest.
Yeah,
You can get
yes,
it.
I'm
You're in
done.
a room full of activists.
I'm all
It's not
done.
like none of us have ever had
Right.
something we
Yeah.
wanted to give off our chest before.
Right.
And never have you had the desire, have you, Mr. Zone, to just pound on an issue? Never, ever, huh? You're just totally mild-mannered. You just go with the flow. Oh, and Barbara, excuse me, you turned a whole nation around on a story about housing and foreclosures and evictions. You went to a foreign country to tell your story. That wasn't you, that was your twin sister? Your evil twin sister? It wasn't you? I'm in a room full, I picked activists. So there's going to be a few of us who have issues we need to get off of our chests. So everyone who has to talk to this committee or knows what this committee is about, it's just fair warning. We are activists. We believe in affordable housing and housing that doesn't necessarily focus on what's affordable, but to make sure there's diversity in the communities we serve. And some of us serve regionally and some of us serve nationally. And so the commitment that comes from us, it is about what we believe with all our hearts about housing in this community, the city and the cities and the county, and what we think should be principles of belief of the folks that we do business with. And so there needs to be a business commitment to some of the things we are committed to in our belief system. So next we have this review, and then we ask for the working committee to get together and talk about some issues that we should prioritize. At this time, Frank, if you would slide to the side, I need you to stay at the table, but I also want to bring Cynthia, one of our staff, county council staff, up. If you'll slide a chair up, Cynthia, because what we just passed out to the committee, I had talked about people doing their top 3 list and seeing if we had any commonalities in the top 3. It ends up that we had a top 11. Why am I not surprised? And so now we need to talk about whether we can kind of sort of agree that our top 11 can go down to a top 5. I don't know that I could get us down to a top 3, but can we get down to a top 5? So let's talk about, Cynthia, if you would review what I asked my colleagues on this advisory committee to do.
All right, Cynthia Mason, council staff. So at the last meeting, Chair Stevens had asked that each member submit 3 topics of interest that they would like to go over moving forward for goals of the committee as well. And that's really to work in conjunction and in parallel with Frank's work as well. So based upon what everyone submitted, I came up with a list of 11. Some of the topics were combined because you all had, passions for, similar things. So basically, obviously, the number 1 is increasing home ownership, small business loans, home repair loans / assistance, increase affordable housing opportunities, which is really a leader in that. So, Chair Stevens, I figured that would be in the maybe top, definitely 5. Linking loans to homeowner counseling and partnering with HUD to ensure borrower success and sustainability, and greater access to banking products for underserved communities. And I know Frank has covered extensively and done research in that area as far as what's available out there in certain communities. Increasing access to working capital, down payment assistance, low interest tax credits, and lenders that create better partnerships in underserved communities outside of the Community Reinvestment Act guidelines. So what do they do above and beyond the CBA agreements and the CRA guidelines? And increase access to working capital for community development. So based upon those topics, I just had kind of like a suggestive area for the subcommittee. However you guys want to move forward with how you define those categories and divide them up would be certainly up to you. But that would be in conjunction with Frank's work and analysis that he's been doing with these, at least the 7 financial institutions that he's been working on. So that's what I came up with. If anyone has anything additional they'd like to add or supplement or expand on these areas, please do so. And that's about all I have.
Yes, Mr. Zone.
Through the chair, are these ranked? Is this, like, I remember taking the survey, are these ranked, like, was increasing home ownership, was that the top ranked one?
No, these aren't ranked. I just
Okay.
gave a list of however many there were, based upon the combination, so.
Even though there were 10 of us, there were 11 suggestions?
Yes, so,
Okay.
yeah, and every member didn't submit topics for everything, so just based upon what I could merge and combine together, I just kind of gathered these 11. So the subcommittee, the members will decide what's important, how to prioritize these 11 items for that. That's what I'd hope maybe today, at least.
That's what I
partially to
hope
get.
too.
Yeah.
And we've got time to discuss it. If we had to come up with 5, what I'd like for us to do right now is circle the 5. We're not voting yet. Okay, if I had to guess, everyone in the room who gets to vote would have chosen number 1. Let's go the easy way, yeah. Okay.
Madam Chair, may I
Yes.
make a point? Because as I look at this, it also seems that some things probably still can be combined a little.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, okay. So if
What would you like to combine
for instance, when it
before we
says,
go any further?
well, increasing access to working capital, and then number 11 is increasing access to work, I mean, that's like the same. even when we think about increasing homeownership, you probably could have an overarching bucket of
That's
products.
down payment.
Yes, down payment goes with increasing homeownership, because I circled that one. So I think some things just kind of nest within each other.
Mhm.
So if I had a board, but I don't, so.
Okay, so 1 and 8 are together and 4 and 11 are together. Okay. 4, 7, and 11, or just 7 and 11? Go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, just through the chair to the committee members, I mean, increasing affordable housing opportunities, I mean, that's such a broad topic. And are we talking, you know, a lending product? Are we talking, you know?
That's why I wanted to combine it with 7 and 11, because we know that we can't get to doing either rehab, new construction, or, for example, Community Development Corporation building new housing and putting volume out there without some working capital, some investment in their staff capacity, and then they create a lot of opportunities. We also know that within the last 2 years, the Greater Cleveland Partnership invested in helping minority-led developers get involved in more affordable housing. So those kinds of things are all things we would love to see increase. And so it is this expansion of services that ultimately generate a more affordable housing, or housing that middle class and working class people can afford. Because one of the things is we don't want to focus exclusively on housing that is 60% or less of median. We also want to make sure that young families or middle class, working class families have the opportunity to buy in Cuyahoga County without breaking the piggy bank. So I'm presuming you still live in the Detroit Shoreway neighborhood, and you want your son to be able to live in that neighborhood too. And if we're all going to find opportunities where our friends, family, and their children can continue to live in the neighborhoods in the core city, the inner ring suburbs, and Cuyahoga County as a whole, we need a range of housing opportunities. And so this is not just about the houses under 100,000. That is one of our key focuses, but we still want to make sure that we're not driving residential opportunities outside of this county. And so we need to figure out a way to create language where 4, 7, and 11 work together to create additional opportunities for housing. Should 6 go in that category too? Or as well?
At 7, excuse me, Madam Chair, at 7 and 11? Or I was thinking 6 should be like with 2 and 3, and, I mean, technically, banking products, I mean, you know, who are you gearing it to?
Okay.
Who do we want them to gear it to? I don't know.
Other thoughts? So our 2 scribes, typically staff scribbles, then the consultant scribbles some more. What are you thinking?
I don't know my scribbling is anymore. I'm not sure my scribbling is more than Cynthia's, but But I think where the conversation is going is a good direction. I was reflecting on the fact that over this year or more, this group started pretty much exclusively looking at monitoring the contract with KeyBank. And you have raised, and other people have raised over the last year, the possibility, well, what about looking at other banks? What about looking at other forms of investment, community reinvestment? So, I mean, this is a logical conversation to have. And I think number one makes sense. I was almost tempted to think of home repair being, this may be unfair, but think of it as so significant that it should stand alone. But I'm not sure that that's right. I'm reflecting on the fact that all the conversations for about 3 or 4 years about the need for home repair funding. So I don't know. That's.
Ms. Martin.
Madam Chair, I have to say what I circled was 1, 2, and 3, first and foremost. And then 6, greater access to banking products. And then 5, the importance of homeowner counseling and making sure that people have a path to financial empowerment. They're not going to end up foreclosed. And then I do believe, to Ms. Donald's point, that so many things nest under those big umbrellas, that I think everything will fit, and it's all important, but obviously the homeownership piece and the home repair piece, to me, just rise to the absolute top.
So one of the new questions that I want to ask the committee is, as we spent the first year talking about the primary lender that has our lockbox banking services for our real estate taxes, but don't we want to take a measurement and a temperature check of lenders in this marketplace to see if we can encourage them across the board to do more when it comes to home ownership opportunities of $100,000 or less, when it comes to making lines of equity available or rehab loans for these folks who bought houses in the core city in the first suburbs, to make sure that that investment continues to have good value, so that we don't just focus on these things, but encouraging those lenders by paying attention to all of them, whether we bring them in or not, asking Frank on our behalf to look at their track records and make people aware of which lenders tend to do better in our communities. Mm-hmm. And that's how that could be something that they use to make choices when they get ready to borrow.
Could I comment on that, Madam Chair?
Absolutely.
So I'll tell you what was a game changer when I used to serve in government in an elected position. After the city did the citywide property inventory in 2015, is we partnered with the Cleveland Restoration Society, the Home Heritage Loan Program, and we were able to target all of the C and D properties. Mm-hmm. And Sally can tell you the stats on the property inventory that just was completed in the city. And we were tracking it through the CDC, and we moved, I think it was like 60+% of those properties, we were able to get them loans and make minor improvements that move them up a letter grade or two. Mm-hmm. It's essential. If you look at Cuyahoga County, most of the housing stock was built, 1890 to 1930. Some of the newer ring suburbs much later than that, after, the 1960s. But, the Maple Heights, the Garfield Heights, the South Euclids, programs like a lending product like that could be a game changer.
We have suburban communities that were built, a predominance of their units were built before 1980. And so now they're 50 plus years old. And so it's time to rehab. That pink bathroom or the green bathroom is no longer something of envy to anyone who... Well, I still kept the pink tile, but I have a white sink and a white toilet now, yeah. I kind of like the tile too. Okay. So, yeah, there was more than one person with a pink bathroom out there. So, are we ready? We may not be ready to take a vote today. It looks like we're ready to do some wordsmithing to get down to 5. And then to see in between now and our next meeting if the wordsmithing meets the requirements. So if Frank and Cynthia, if we could try and wordsmith in the next 2 weeks, then we could mail this out. As you know, council takes a vacation in August, and so our first meeting would be in mid-September, hopefully. If we could structure that now so that we could send out a notice that saves the date for everyone and then get everything out to them.
Madam Chair, can I make a suggestion?
Certainly.
So here's what I'm hearing, overwhelming support for number 1. That number 3 could stand alone on its own. 5 and 6 could be combined. And with 5 and 6, you can also even roll in 10. And then 7 and 11 are combined. And so this way, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 big bucket items.
Who did you combine, 4, 7, and 11, or just 7 and 11? I'm not quite sure what you said.
Madam
Oh,
Chair,
so
friendly,
I thought 9 was a typo, low interest tax
I
credits.
thought it meant low.
Income tax credits.
And I was just gonna suggest to put that still back in 7, maybe the working capital, I mean, it's all like,
Yeah, one of these is going to have like these bullets that say these kinds of things are included in it. But I wasn't going to sweat it. I was going to let Frank and Cynthia sweat it.
But it makes sense, what Ayana is saying.
so I have a I think we're almost there, so a friendly amendment, so to speak. So I'm thinking number 1 is increasing and sustaining home ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have down payment, and then number 5 rolls into number 1. And then number 2 is small business loan, and no ranking order. Number 2 is small business loans. Number 3 is home repair. I agree, that is important. I mean, needs a spotlight. We've eliminated 4 and 5. Number 6, I guess, could be on its own, or you can combine 6 and 10. 7 is increasing access to working capital, and number 11, and number 4, and number 9. And we're done, I think. If you combine 6 and 10. I don't know what to do with 6 and 10. 5 was
5
at
went
number
to
1.
1.
I like puzzles.
I like your like of puzzles. Okay, so we've had at least 3 constructive consolidation recommendations.
The group did the work for us.
Yeah.
We're done.
So you just have to decode that.
Well, we'll decode it, yeah, right.
Decode it and get it into a methodology we can follow without, like mine, I have like these arrows that go
I've done
3
the same
different
thing.
directions.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that brings us to close to closure. Are there any additional comments?
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Since we now have a quorum, would you like to go back and vote on the minutes?
Yes, thank you. Forgot about that. Have you had a chance, has the committee had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting? If there are additions or edits, please let me know. Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval of the minutes? Is there a second? Moved by Anderson, second by Benjamin, Gary Benjamin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the minutes have passed.
Madam Chair, just for the record, I know in the last meeting, Ms. Blue Donald and I weren't here. We also, both of us serve on Cleveland Neighborhood of Progress's board, and we had our board meeting that day. So apologies to everyone, but.
Occasionally we get overbooked. And I am very supportive of the work that Cleveland Neighborhood Progress does. They're whether they think they are or not, you are active, being activists on that board as well. So I'm pleased by the fact that you continue to be active in more than one circle. Thank you for your service today, and this meeting is adjourned.